In this little video, I will show you how to use the scale tool, which is found here in this little icon. So I'm just going to expand this and bring into the viewport. So I'm just going to look at the three ones. The first one is a scale 3D, the second one is a scale 2D, and the last one is a scale 1D. So in the first case, the scale 3D is independent of whatever viewport that you're working in. So no matter which viewport you're going to be using that scale tool, it's not going to affect how your geometry looks like. And I'll make a demonstration to better illustrate what I'm saying. Scale 2D will depend on which plane you're working, whether it's the ZX plane or the XY plane or the ZY plane. And the scale 1D will depend on which axis you're working, whether it's X axis, Y axis, or Z axis. So I'm going to create a box. I'm going to place one corner at 0, and I'm going to make a box that is about 4 inches by 4 inches by 4 inches in each direction. Maybe I'm going to switch to shaded mode so that we can better visualize. So shade, shade, and shade. Okay, so like I said, it's 4 by 4 by 4. So the first one, I'm going to do a scale 3D. So if we want to better visualize the dimension, I can always go to linear dimension, snap to endpoint, and go and grab this endpoint, and go and grab this endpoint, and position it like that. So it's 4 by 4. So I'm going to select everything, including the dimensions, and I'm going to click on Scale 3D. It's asking me for the origin point. I can either type in 0 or just left click at the corner of my box here. And the scale factor by default is at 1. So let's say I want to increase it by 2, so a scale factor of 2, so I just type in 2 and I right click, and you can see that now it's a box of 8 by 8 by 8 in X, Y, and Z. Okay, so I can do the same, for example, in the front viewport. I just do a scale 3D, go and grab the origin point, for example, at this corner, and I just right click so that I have again the factor, which was already by default at 2, so it increased by another 2 scaling factor, so now it's at 16 by 16 by 16. Okay, and as you can see, no matter what's the viewport that I'm working in, it doesn't affect it. So I just go scale 3D. I can go at this corner, for example, and then I just type in a scale factor of 2. So I just now in bold, you can see that it's already there by default, so I don't need to type in 2. I just right click and I increase it by another factor of 2 by 2 by 2. Yeah, so the dimension is 32 inches by 32 inches by 32 inches. Okay, so it's totally independent from the viewport that you're working in when you use the scale 3D. I'm going to undo and go back to my box of 4 by 4 by 4 like this, and I'm just going to offset zoom extent all by right clicking on this icon, and I recenter everything. Okay, now I'm going to do the scale 2D, which is a bit different. So on scale 2D, like I said, it's going to be dependent on the plane that you're working in. So here in this case, in the top view, I'm working on the XY plane. So I'm just going to do scale 2D, select everything, enter, and again I can go to and snap to the origin point or that corner in 0. And I'm just going to do it this time, instead of typing a scale factor, I'm just going to do it dynamically. I press shift, and with the left mouse click, I can change its scale dynamically, also like this. So I'm just going to do a random scale, and you can see that it's scaled properly in the XY plane. Now it's at 9.24 by 9.24 inches, but in the Z direction, obviously, it maintained the 4 units, the 4-inch height. So if I click in the linear dimension, you can see clearly that it's at 4. Okay, I'm just gonna undo and go back to my 4 by 4, and to better illustrate again what I meant by how it depends on the viewport you're working in. This time I'm working on the front viewport, so I'm on the ZX plane. I do a scale 2D. I can grab this point, for example. I press shift to constrain on the x-axis, left click, and again dynamically change to whatever size. So you can see in perspective how it affects the dimensions in the ZX plane. And I left click again, and there you have it. So now it's 12.61 by 12.61 and 4 inches in the y direction that is kept. Okay, so that's for the scale 2D. I'm going to undo and go back to my box of 4x4x4 and just right click on zoom extend all viewports to recenter everything. And this time I'm going to work with the scale 1D. So I only work in one direction, either the X direction, the Y direction, or the Z direction. So I'm going to take, again, I'm going to select everything and I'm going to click on scale 1D and I'm going to go to my origin point, which is here, and I just press shift and left click, and now I can stretch it only on the Z axis. So let's exaggerate a bit like this, and I just left click again. So now I went from 4 to 17.59 inches in the Z axis, but I maintained the 4 inches in the Z and the 4 inches in the Y direction. Undo. This time I'm going to go in the other direction. I'm going to go on the Z direction this time. So I'm just going to do scale 1D, left click here, press shift, left click, and stretch it, and there you have it. So I only changed one dimension in one direction. That's for scale 1D. So that's also dependent on the viewport. Basically, that's what you need to know for the scale 1D, 2D, 3D. It's no big deal. Again, if you want some more information about how to use a scale 1D to 2D or 3D, just click on the function and press F1. And it's going to take you immediately to the scale tool and give you a bit of a description and with little videos. Okay, so don't hesitate to go and check it out and practice. Okay, thank you.